Uh, I'm just not going to hit that right now.
It began with a decision level, resolute, and irrevocable. Following 6 weeks of relentless testimony, bank statements, and tearful cross-examinations, the courtroom was held in suspended animation as the judge leaned forward and uttered the verdict: Robyn Brown has to pay back $1.2 million to Janelle and Christine. The words didn't simply fall, they exploded. At one end of the room, Christine's gaze did not waver, and Janelle breathed out slowly, as if she had been holding it for 10 years. In front of them, Kody ground his jaw so hard the veins in his neck seemed to throb, and Robyn shook visibly, blurring back tears that no longer touched anybody. The courtroom was full: press, relatives, onlookers, all in anticipation of affirmation of what enthusiasts had known for so long. The proof had been damning: withdrawals from the joint Family Traditions LLC account into a shadow company called KN&R Holdings by Kody and Robyn. Forensic accountants had tracked more than $1.2 million in personal spending, high-end furniture, designer items, and astonishingly, an $80,000 per year salary to their live-in nanny, while the rest of the family was placed under fiscal restraint and emotional control. Janelle, who had given up security to reside in an RV on Coyote Pass, and Christine, who had left the family with nothing but children and her own dignity, had at last been justified. This was not merely about lost money, it was about power, betrayal, and control masquerading as patriarchal guidance. The judge minced no words, labeling the actions a calculated abuse of funds held in common, adding that the financial disparity went far beyond ignorance or mistake. The courtroom fell silent as the gavel rang down, the echo remaining like thunder. This was not a network show. There was no fade to black. This was legal reality, and for the first time, the repercussions were real. The card house constructed on unity and sacrifice had fallen, and underlying was a paper trail drenched in self-interest. And this was only the beginning. To see how it all fell apart, you have to look back before the verdict, before the lawsuit, back to the kitchen table discussions that never made it onto TLC's slick cuts. Christine was the first to pick up on the discrepancies, little things at first. While she was pinching pennies over grocery orders and putting off the kids' dental appointments, Robyn's kids showed up in fresh outfits, with fresh iPads, even when production hiatuses rolled around. Then were the larger red flags: Kody not wanting to chip in for the Utah relocation, the behind-schedule construction of homes at Coyote Pass, and the perpetual excuse of the family fund is running low. But Janelle, practical, organized, always a numbers woman, was the one to request the statements. What she discovered was eye-opening. Jointly held family money had been systematically diverted into a sole proprietorship business account, KN&R Holdings LC, a firm Christine and Janelle had never heard of. The trail of paper was exact, legal, deliberate. Every move of every dollar made a point, and it wasn't about maintaining family cohesion. It was about power consolidation around two individuals, Kody and Robyn, who were pretending to be the family all by themselves. Janelle approached Kody, papers in hand. His reaction? Chilly, defensive. "You don't get business," he claimed. "You wouldn't make it a day in the real world." That's when the decision was made. Christine and Janelle had asked enough. They were going to court, not for revenge, for truth and justice. Their attorneys prepared a case constructed on electronic transfers, tax returns, and sworn declarations from former bookkeepers and even a past TLC employee. The court document dropped with the force of a thunderclap: fraud, breach of fiduciary responsibility, and emotional distress. And behind it all, $1.2 million that was allegedly intended for the entire family, secretly diverted to a household that had already distinguished itself in all other respects. This was no longer a family argument. This was a matter for the courts. And Robyn? No longer could she hide behind weeping and silence. The facts had prevailed louder than any confession ever could. The courtroom atmosphere was tense, thick with years of unresolved betrayal and silent suffering. As Janelle and Christine entered that morning, heads held high, they weren't just plaintiffs in a legal dispute, they were mothers, women, and pillars of a fractured family finally standing up against the silent theft that had corroded their dreams. The judge, a firm but fair man known for his no-nonsense approach to domestic litigation, took his seat. In the first row sat Robyn, flanked by a visibly uncomfortable Kody, his arms crossed so tightly they seemed welded to his chest. The irony was impossible to ignore. Kody, who once championed unity and patriarchal leadership, was now watching that illusion unravel by the very hands he once expected to be loyal without question. The evidence came fast and brutal. Emails with Kody's approval for fund transfers, receipts for luxury purchases tagged to KN&R Holdings LLC. One line item even read, 4/6 dining room chandelier invoice to family account. Christine's lawyer read it aloud with pointed clarity. Gasps echoed in the gallery. But it wasn't just the money, it was the pattern. The systematic exclusion of Janelle and Christine from financial decisions, the false pretenses of family bankruptcy while private renovations continued in Robyn's home. A forensic accountant testified that over a 3-year span, more than $1.2 million had been moved from the family traditions account, often just days before Christine's and Janelle's requests for support were denied. Every transaction was a memory shattered, birthdays missed, repairs delayed, futures postponed. The prosecution wasn't painting a picture of greed. They were constructing a portrait of deliberate manipulation. And Robyn's silence? That was its own testimony. Her lawyer argued she wasn't aware of the transfers, that she trusted her husband, but as Christine's attorney revealed, Robyn was a co-signer on the KN&R account, and her own signature appeared on at least 17 separate withdrawals, each one dated shortly after a major family dispute. It was no longer about who knew, it was about who benefited, and the answer was undeniable. As the court broke for recess, the whispers outside the chambers grew louder. Spectators, journalists, even courtroom staff, everyone knew what this meant. It wasn't just a case about misallocated funds anymore. It was a reckoning, a symbolic battle between those who had sacrificed for a vision of plural harmony and the ones who reaped the rewards while tightening the strings. When the court reconvened, the judge addressed the room with a tone that hinted at the gravity of what was coming. The evidence we've heard today, he began, suggests a long-standing pattern of financial concealment. He didn't need to elaborate. The numbers had already spoken. Christine sat upright, her expression unflinching. Janelle leaned forward, clutching the edge of the table with quiet intensity. And Robyn? Her face was buried in her palms, the weight of public exposure more punishing than the legal arguments. What came next hit like a hammer blow. The court-appointed financial examiner took the stand and presented the breakdown. Vacation homes paid for in cash. Vehicle purchases never disclosed to the rest of the family, and shockingly, a college fund for Robyn's children fully stocked while Christine's daughter Sable had to crowdsource donations for her spinal surgery. A collective gasp escaped from the back row. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. Robyn's children were prioritized. Christine's and Janelle's disregarded. The judge's face remained stoic, but even he seemed visibly rattled. These are not simple accounting errors, he said. They are decisions, intentional ones. He then turned to the defendant's table. And the consequences of those decisions will now be addressed. The ruling wasn't just about restitution, it was a public declaration that favoritism disguised as oversight is fraud, plain and simple. A verdict was now not just expected. It was demanded by the truth already laid bare in documents, witness testimony, and the pain etched into the faces of the women who had lived it. Janelle and Christine didn't need to speak. Their silence told the story loud enough. The courtroom had barely settled when the judge continued, his voice slicing through the tension like a razor. This court recognizes the irreparable emotional damage sustained by the plaintiffs. But today, we will address the material imbalance first. And just like that, the number was read aloud, $1.2 million. That was the court's determination of the amount unjustly funneled into Robyn Brown's benefit directly or indirectly from the family accounts, LLCs, and shared assets meant to serve all sister wives equally. The reaction was immediate. Christine inhaled sharply, her eyes flicking toward Janelle, who simply nodded, as if finally, the truth had a dollar amount. Robyn's lawyers tried to object, citing vague definitions of family use and subjective valuation, but the judge was unmoved. The financial testimony was clear, he said. This was not miscommunication. This was misappropriation. The ruling hit like thunder. It wasn't just restitution, it was vindication. The judge outlined how funds were rerouted through shell entities Family Traditions LLC and KN&R Holdings, then used exclusively to maintain Robyn's household, lifestyle, and children's expenses. Meanwhile, Christine had been using GoFundMe for medical expenses. Janelle had been parked in an RV. The court then played a clip from the show one aired years ago where Kody proudly proclaimed his intent to treat all his wives equally. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. In the courtroom, that very declaration became damning evidence of breach. These aren't just reality TV personalities, the judge said. They are individuals who trusted a system that was deliberately manipulated against them. What followed was a chilling moment. A court clerk presented color-coded spreadsheets showing deposit flows from show royalties, book deals, and family merchandise profits. Every chart showed one trend: money pooling into Robyn's corner. The silence in the room was suffocating. This wasn't a story anymore. It was fact, on the record. And now, it was time to begin unraveling the damage, transaction by transaction, lie by lie. As the judge closed the ledger of evidence, a ripple of emotion washed over the courtroom. For over a decade, viewers watched a family fall apart on television, but today, the legal system had turned that drama into judgment. And now, Robyn Brown, once seen as the sweet, tearful, misunderstood fourth wife, was standing at the center of a financial scandal that even her lawyers couldn't explain away. With every transfer listed, every invoice traced, Christine and Janelle's narrative of betrayal solidified into a legal truth. The judge then shifted focus, addressing the secondary effects, the opportunity cost and emotional injury inflicted by being misled about their future. In his words, these women invested not just their income, but their identity, their time, and their trust. That trust was exploited, not honored. Then came the most unexpected moment. Courtroom cameras, though barred from filming, had their transcripts leaked within hours. Media outlets exploded with headlines: Robyn Brown ordered to repay $1.2 million to former sister wives, and court finds Brown family funds misused. Meanwhile, Janelle sat still, visibly shaking. Not from fear but release. A decade's worth of silent suffering was finally being heard, acknowledged, and validated. Christine, who once walked away from Coyote Pass with nothing but emotional baggage, now had proof that her departure was more than just emotional survival. It was the right call. And Robyn? Her face was unreadable. Gone was the mascara-smeared sadness. In its place, a silence that echoed louder than any defense. Kody avoided eye contact, arms folded, as if withdrawing into himself, refusing to see what everyone else could. What was once billed as a story of shared land and shared love had officially become a tale of greed, division, and control. But this wasn't the end of the session. The court had more to uncover. The judge ordered the next phase, testimony on how these funds were justified. Robyn would have to answer under oath why she believed she deserved more, why her household became the financial priority. And based on the reactions from the bench, it was clear the answers better be good. The next morning, the courtroom was packed again, reporters lining the walls, spectators buzzing about what Robyn might say. Cameras weren't allowed, but sketches and whispered recaps filled the media. The court was ready for Robyn's testimony, and no amount of preparation could soften the blow.